Hi viewers, today we have an exciting interview with Alex Holmes, CEO of Moneygram, and Grant Lyons, Chief Revenue Officer of Moneygram. What is your strategy or expansion plan in Australia?
It's a great question. And Australia is one of our key send markets globally, and so for us, making sure we have a great quality service for all of our customers is really our primary focus. I think we have a great network here. We have over 1,000 locations physically where consumers can walk in to send money to literally anywhere in the world. I think Australia we send to about 170 different countries. So our plans here are really to capitalize on the strength of that physical network and really begin to build out a more digital business. We're one of the first companies to launch kiosk-based money transfers through 7-Eleven a number of years ago, with our partner CCG. And what we're trying to do now is really become more digital, and so online sends is becoming an important part of our business, and we just launched Moneygram online here in July. So we're excited for all the opportunities that will create in terms of allowing customers to go online, send from their bank accounts to wherever they want in the world.
How has migration contributed to the growth of Moneygram? We are getting 200,000 migrants every year.
Yeah, no, it's quite incredible. Migration is really what Moneygram is all about. We try to make the world a flatter place and a quicker, easier place for people to live, particularly migrants who we know move for various reasons, sometimes to better their lives, sometimes to just find work and send money back home, whatever it may be. But migration really feeds our business, and I think it feeds the world in a number of different ways. So, for us, in Australia's top 10 destination for migrants, obviously population continues to grow. And so a lot of what we do here in this office is very similar to other places, which is try to make sure that our product and our service is relevant to those migrants coming here, and then obviously that they're aware of our service and that they're aware of the capabilities that we have back home. But that is one of the most interesting things about our business, is trying to be relevant to the various number of different migrants that we have. And so partnerships, sponsorships, grassroots events are pretty important for what we do.
You must be aware, as per the census report, Indian subcontinent people are growing in numbers, and we are almost one of the topmost migrants. Has that helped you in your business to India?
Yeah, it really has, and we're actually very proud to have Yogesh Sangley as our leader of Australia Asia Pacific, and certainly our office back in Mumbai and all the activities that we have going on in India and the broader subcontinent are incredibly beneficial to Moneygram from Australia, but also from all different areas in the world, because obviously the Indian diaspora spans a number of different continents as a very important part of our market. But I'll let Grant talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. I think for the remittance industry or the money transfer industry, it's ultimately around choice and convenience for the consumer. If you look at our Indian network, it's historically been based around the banking community and exchange houses led by Supreme Securities, UAE Exchange and Thomas Cook, also with some strong network collaboration with Muthoot Finance. As the Indian diaspora has grown in working internationally, we have been working with retail partners such as Wiseman Forex to actually build out a retail network in states such as UP and Bihar to again offer more choice and convenience for our Indian customers.
I'm very impressed that you're looking at those areas like UP and Bihar, which are pretty backward. That means the focus there for subcontinent. I'm very happy to hear that. How do you compete with, there's a lot of competition in the market for money transfer, and how do you compete with the banks and the others?
I think that's a great question. I think our industry is quite fragmented, but I think at the end of the day, consumers rely on a secure, trusted service. Moneygram has been around for over 70 years. It plays a strong part in communities right around the world, including in India and the rest of the subcontinent. It is a 10-minute service. We're very cognizant of our role in providing financial inclusion. And when families need to get funds back quickly, it needs to be through a trusted and secure service. Moneygram has been investing in communities for many years. We have a foundation based around children's education. and we've all had an opportunity together with our local team members in our office based out of Mumbai to participate in a number of those events. And I think children and empowering families through education is a very valuable contribution, we believe, to the community, and investing back into the communities that our customers come from and sacrifice in many cases when they live and work overseas to help their families back home.
It's really nice to hear from a corporate company like Moneygram that whatever you earn from the community, you're trying to give back to communities a small amount. And we appreciate and thank you for doing it in India.
Thank you.
And as you have mentioned that Moneygram is going digital, could you give us some feedback or some insight as to how much investment you're making and what we can look at it?
Yeah, no, it's a super exciting time for us, and I think digitalization really means two key things for us. One is actually increasing the capabilities to send and receive money digitally, but it also means putting a better product into the market that is really more personalized to customers through digital. And so on that front, we are expanding quite rapidly around the globe with Moneygram.com services, so online ability to send, and just launching here in Australia. But we've actually added about 9 new markets this year already, and we're on our way north of 10 markets live, and we're on our way towards about 30 markets by the end of the year where customers will be able to send directly with Moneygram, which is very exciting for us. And then on the receive side, we have a lot of activities that we're undertaking, particularly here in Asia Pac and in India and across many markets, to activate not only account deposit transfers but also sends into wallets. And wallets are becoming a really key part of financial inclusion in a number of different places. And so we have a lot of activities ongoing, and really bringing those all together so that we have a capability that I think is going to change, how we go to market and how our constituents in a number of different markets really view the product. So, for example, today I think a lot of people think of Moneygram as a cash-to-cash delivery service, but we actually have the ability in countries like India to place money indirectly into a bank account. But to do that from an online service into a bank account just makes the entire experience digital and completely cashless, which is, I think, in line with a lot of financial inclusion activities. And also, to Grant's point, back to simplifying the service and making it more convenient for our customers. Specific to India, we're looking forward to working with some of the payment banks. We have some initiatives underway with companies like Reliance Jio and also with Paytm, which is obviously one of the fastest growing wallets. And so getting through regulation and the complexities around that, but waiting on some licensing changes and some other things from the RBI, which is always an interesting experience. But once those are ready to go and live, I think it can potentially change the landscape in a number of different ways, putting the remittance directly into that customer's wallet, allowing them then the capability to use that wallet in market can be very, very interesting.
Can I see, as for sending my money to my family and friends, very easy. I have Moneygram. But for B2B, I have a lot of difficulty, especially when you're doing in US dollars. We have limited players in this market, and we are being ripped off on the exchange rate. That's one thing which I've been requesting all the exchange houses, if they can also look at BNB, which is a big market.
Yes.
And because I use certain services, I'm not happy. I have no other options to do, and I have to use those because the competition is not there. There are big banks who are ripping us off. But any thought on B2B?
I think that's an excellent question. I think when you look at Moneygram, our core business is providing family remittance and supporting families who send funds home for loved ones, whether it's for emergency needs or whether it's perhaps for education. I think the market is very, very competitive. So from a pricing perspective, you have companies like Moneygram, you have regional players, and you also have corridor specialists as well. So I think consumers in Australia, whether they're transacting through a physical network, through Moneygram or through an online digital platform, are in a very, very competitive market. So I think all consumers should feel good about the price competitive nature of this industry. And then I think the strength of the brand, the trust and the security is important. And I think it's also very important when you look at the physical payout network in India, and I think a mixture of the banks, the exchange houses, and particularly as we're building out our retail network, is providing as much choice and convenience as we can, together with the ability to pay out into a bank account, or as Alex just mentioned, to one of the new wallets through the payment banks in India.
No, I'd just like to add, if you don't mind, on the B2B specifically, I think it's an absolutely fascinating area because it's something that I've been in this industry a long time in a number of different roles, and it is a very interesting opportunity for us. And in fact, it actually adds a complexity to our business because regulators tend to look at our industry and what we do as a person-to-person remittance. And when big money comes in, which oftentimes is because of small business and small business entrepreneurship between markets, it actually adds confusion to the transaction for us and makes it more complicated with regulators. So we actually have an initiative underway internally to work on more of a B2B model in terms of what do we do with high dollar payments, how do we actually facilitate those transfers and actually help the communities, but also actually make and continue to improve the quality and the safety and soundness of our service. And so I can only talk about what's in my head and what plans we have because we don't have that service yet, but I think it's a very compelling thing. It's an absolute need that needs to be solved for. And personally, when you look at the cost of sending money, compliance is obviously a leading, challenge associated with that. Dealing with central banks, dealing with fluctuations in foreign currency, all of that adds complexity to it. But when you get it down to large dollar payments, you should actually be paying less for that service because of the background quality associated with the ability to send, meaning we know where the money came from. It's easier to identify. We know where it's going. It's easier to identify. And so I think the cost of that service actually should come down, and that's something that I really like to push Moneygram into in our next phase here as we move forward. So no promises to you because I don't know when that can come, but it is something that I'm very intrigued by, and I think there is a high demand for.
Thank you for at least looking at that area, because every year I've been ripped off a number of times. Whenever I go to transfer money, it's a big money, big amount which we are transferring. Yeah. I'm losing there.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I do think that high dollar senders, high value senders that are, KYC, that provide more information, they should get a better FX rate. I mean, I think it just comes hand in hand with what we can do. And, we want that type of service. And, high dollar transactors are just as good as others. But again, in our industry, when you start looking at, P2P payments and large dollars come in, it's like, whoa, and that's what adds the complexity to it.
What are different ways of sending money to India in a simple? Can you do online?
You can now in Australia, yeah. We're very excited about that.
And then you can go to the 7-Eleven and you can do it?
Yeah, we have 1,000 locations, actually over 1,000 locations across Australia. So we have 7-Eleven, which is a great service, and again, kiosk-based service. And that really adds an element of convenience because you key in the information yourself and then go to the counter to tender for the transaction. But we also partner with Travel Money, which is located in a number of very convenient areas, PFG as well, and then all sorts of countless smaller retailers across the country. Most of those are walk-in and pay in cash, and then obviously online allows you to pull directly from your bank account, which I think is very different and very unique, especially for those customers that aren't dealing in cash in a lot of ways if a lot of their money is going into a bank account. And then, as we talked about, on the other side in India, you have the opportunity to pick up in cash in thousands of locations, banks and all sorts of different providers, as Grant said, through different merchants and different regions across India. And then you obviously have the ability to move into bank accounts. Any bank account in India money can be put into, and then hopefully we'll get the wallets up in the coming weeks and months, and really begin to kind of transform and change the way that you can move money. So we try to provide the service in as many convenient factors as possible.
Currency fluctuation is a major thing. How does your company deal with it? Because today dollar is 72 plus, and it was 74 3 days back.
Absolutely.
I did not book US dollars, so I've lost a lot of money there. So as a consumer or as a person who's sending money to friends and relatives back home, I should be sure that I get the best exchange rate. That's what.
Yeah, I find in our business, particularly with anyone from South Asia, Indians in particular, you tell us when you're sending money because you guys are watching that rate all the time. You know, foreign exchange is an interesting thing to deal with, particularly on a global scale. We actually have changed our treasury operations to try to bring that service closer to the regions where we're actually transacting. So we have treasury operations 5 years ago were only based in the United States. Now we have treasury operations in the United States, in Europe, and now in Singapore as well. So we're trying to get much more actively in the market, trading more actively so that we can get things like the rupee at the best rate possible and give you the best rate in the market. We do have to deal with the currency fluctuations themselves. So the spread that we put on that exchange rate, we try to make as competitive as possible because we know there's high demand for the service and a lot of competition. On the other hand, you know, currency fluctuations are based on a lot of things: strengthening U.S. dollar, things happening in India, things happening in Australia move the exchange rate around quite a bit, and we have to be sensitive to that and be able to react because we recognize that consumers are opportunistic. They want to maximize that send home. They, you know, particularly in the Indian diaspora, you want to maximize that send, get as much money as you can for the value of your send. And so having a good FX rate, making sure we understand what's happening with the market and advertising that in a way that's transparent is really important to us.
Thank you very much. That's the questions because you have answered most of my. The only last question, which is my personal, is compliance. Because a lot of Australians have been ripped off by people in Africa and Thailand, Philippines. You know what it is. Because we have done an interview earlier with the compliance in the national. It was in the police force who heads in Queensland. You can.
I don't mind talking about it. Consumer fraud globally is one of the biggest challenges for our consumers, and not just consumers who use money transfer, but consumers that are in any sector. And I think the proliferation of online communication, unfortunately, has actually added to the complexities around it. One of the single biggest things that we have to deal with are challenges of customer identification on the send and receive side and trying to protect our consumers from fraud. And it comes in many forms. There's elderly scams, there's person in need scams, romance. Last 5 years, improving our compliance programs and trying to put in new rules and new controls in place to slow that down. We've taken a lot of steps recently to try to lead the industry in terms of consumer protection through changes in terms of how much money people can send, how frequently they can send, registration requirements in terms of identification, information about consumers on both the send and receive side, and we operate what we call an active interdiction list, meaning as soon as we know someone might be a scammer on the receive side, we try to block those consumers as much as possible. Consumer fraud as an industry has grown exponentially in the U.S. In the United States alone, elderly fraud is $40 billion industry. It's unbelievable. I'm very proud to say that MoneyGram's fraud rates are at 6-year lows. As the rest of the world has gone up, ours have gone down. We actually, unfortunately, are dealing with the side effects of that, which is we get a lot of complaints from consumers about the new ID checks that we have and the new compliance controls that we have. But all of that is being done to try to lead the industry and get fraud out of our system. You know, once you send, getting that money back is almost impossible once it's gone. And so we've really increased our prevented fraud rates as well. We prevented something like $350 million last year, which is incredible when you think about the size of our business. So we're very proud of those efforts, but it continues to be a problem. We work with law enforcement in numerous countries around the world. We try to educate, we try to be proactive on it, but it is a very, very, very difficult thing to do because as technology grows, not only does the scams proliferate and get bigger, the technology behind them allows them to expand as well. So it's a very sad thing, but it is something that we're trying very hard to lead the industry on. And that's where I think coming back to brand affinity and trust and security, you know, to be able to say that we have the lowest fraud rates, I think if you're a consumer who's concerned about sending money home and the security of your service, trusting someone like MoneyGram to provide that versus, a new name or a startup that may look like they have a better rate or something today, that can lead to problems down the road. So we try to lead the industry in compliance. We're very passionate about it. We work very actively with regulators like AUSTRAC here in Australia. So it is a big challenge. It's something we're working very hard on, and I think we're doing a good job.
Thank you, Alex, for your time. Enjoy your stay in Down Under.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grant.